The occupiers who tried to break through to Kupiansk were drowned in a pipe, and the gas pipeline they tried to use to enter the city has been damaged and flooded. We'll tell you all about it right now. Time to turn off the tap. The EU has introduced its 19th package of sanctions against Russia, which will hit Russia's energy and finances, as well as the countries helping it. Against the backdrop of the announcement about the TikTok deal, Trump and Xi Jinping had a phone conversation. What else did the leaders of the two superpowers discuss? Nikolai Baskov is in a panic. It turns out he and his mother are being threatened and cursed. Who has managed to frighten Russia's main showman so much? We'll tell you more about this and other topics, but for now, friends, subscribe to the channel Ukraina Segodnya and give this episode a like. So, Russian MiG-31 fighter jets violated Estonian airspace this Friday, September 19th. They remained there for 12 minutes. This was reported by the press service of the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. According to the agency, the violation occurred over the Gulf of Finland. Against this backdrop, the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs even summoned the Russian Chargé d'Affaires in Estonia to hand him a note of protest. Sources told Politico that 3 Russian MiG-31s, which are capable of carrying Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, were heading toward Tallinn. Italian F-35s were scrambled to intercept them. Special Operations Forces struck the logistics hub of the 810th Brigade in the Kursk region. This brigade is involved in the executions of Ukrainian soldiers. Soon, we will show you footage of the disposal of Russian war criminals. The Russian army's offensive on Kupiansk is being commanded by former Ukrainian brigade commander Serhiy Starozhenko. In our report, we will talk about the effectiveness of this traitor's command. Let's take a look at all the details in the military review.
A successful trap by Ukrainian special forces. GUA operatives infiltrated the Tendrivska spit and set up a minefield, which caught a Vityaz multi-purpose tractor. The Russians used it to transport personnel and weapons to enemy positions. The logistics hub of one of the Russian brigades in the Kursk region was also not left untouched. Special Operations Forces struck a storage base for material supplies, ammunition depots, as well as a concealed location for the occupiers' weapons and military equipment. Meanwhile, the situation in the Kupiansk direction remains difficult.
The very center of the city of Kupiansk is currently under the control of Russia. Such is the peaceful population of the country.
It is reported that Russian soldiers are using pipes to move personnel into Kupiansk.
We were caught by the Russians and told how to be in the pipe, what to do. They gave us some food, 1.5 liters of water each, and led us to the pipe one by one. A small cart, a nimble scooter, a sturdy cart tied securely to it. They then sat us down and clearly showed us precisely what we needed to do.
But Ukrainian forces are successfully blowing up and damaging the pipes, as well as capturing Russians.
They slipped through and dug in, reported to their command from some hut that they had secured their position.
But what I truly wonder exactly is the precise question here.
What is the situation with the occupiers' advance in the Kupiansk direction?
Their target is Kupiansk-Zaliznychne, south of Kupiansk. Right now, from the specific places where the intense fighting is currently happening and where the Russian forces have recently appeared, it's a considerable distance of approximately 7 to 8 kilometers to the nearest railway line, which is indeed quite a significant and notable distance.
Also, over the past day, specifically on September 18th, there were 172 recorded combat clashes, 60 of which were in the Pokrovsk direction.
Regardless of precisely how the upcoming autumn campaign or a new strategic offensive operation is meticulously replanned there, the absolutely key focus will undoubtedly remain on the eastern direction, and most likely the primary axis of attack will certainly stay the same. This includes the capture of Kupiansk, the Mirnohrad agglomeration, the capture of the agglomeration, Kostiantynivka, Druchkivka, Kramatorsk, and the capture of Sloviansk in the north.
And as for the Pokrovsk direction, what are the Russians aiming to achieve there?
They are waiting to see what will happen in the north, depending on what happens north of Pokrovsk in the Myrnohrad agglomeration. That's how they will act. If they manage to encircle Pokrovsk from the north, it will create a pocket, and then they will try to squeeze it with a blockade, attempting to organize the encirclement of our forces. If they don't succeed, they will attack from the front, that is, from the southern front of Sinenik, and will focus their efforts there.
According to the BBC, it turns out that the Russian army's offensive on Kupiansk is being commanded by a former Ukrainian officer, Lieutenant General Serhiy Starozhenko, who back in 2014 betrayed his oath, even though he used to say that the oath was above all else.
And so now
Russian Shaheds will have even less distance to cover to cross the Ukrainian border. It is reported that Russia has built a new launch site for Bopilau in the Bryansk region, just 35 kilometers from the border with Ukraine.
75 kilometers from the front line, or 35 kilometers from the front line. Those 40 kilometers don't really make a big difference, but I wouldn't say it's nothing. Maybe just a bit farther, maybe a bit more room to maneuver. This isn't the place where they're being stockpiled. With a mass launch of Shaheds, the number increases by an order of magnitude, right? That's why for a launch area you need about 10 times more space, for example.
Meanwhile, in Lithuania, a fragment of a Russian Juran drone was found. It's believed that the drone fragment was washed ashore from the Baltic Sea.
But one thing that definitely hasn't been washed ashore is the new Ukrainian weaponry. Ukraine produces 50 Flamingo missiles every month, is ramping up the production of Polyonets, and the developers of Flamingo will also be making interceptor drones. More on the latest developments of the Ukrainian defense industry coming up. So the European Commission has proposed to target Russian energy, finances and cryptocurrency operations, as well as to impose sanctions on companies in other countries that help Russia sell oil and acquire technologies and products for weapons manufacturing. Such measures, as part of the 19th sanctions package, were announced on Friday by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. As for stopping the purchase of oil and gas from Russia by both Russia itself and the European Union, which was demanded by Donald Trump, the President of the European Commission promised to abandon them. I quote, "In 3 years, Russia's revenues from oil sales in Europe have decreased by 90%. Now we will turn this page forever," she said. However, she did not specify any timeline. In addition, von der Leyen stated, "We are banning the import of Russian LNG into European markets. The time has come to turn off the tap, and we are ready for this." Von der Leyen also confirmed that the European Commission is developing a scheme to use frozen Russian reserves to provide Ukraine with a reparations loan. She assured that the assets themselves are not expected to be touched and that EU countries will simply share these risks. And now, friends, the moment of truth. Trump spoke with Xi Jinping. This happened for the 3rd time this year. NBC News notes that Trump discussed with Xi the possibility of reaching an agreement that would allow the popular app TikTok to continue operating in the US. What else could the leaders of the two superpowers have discussed? And can this phone conversation be called a breakthrough? We cover this and more in our international review.
US President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping held their first phone conversation in 3 months. The day before, Trump refused to approve more than $400 million in military aid to Taiwan because he plans to make a deal with China.
China needs us. And as you know, I have a very good relationship with President Xi. But China needs us much more than we need them.
But, as we can clearly see now, yes, indeed, President Trump's primary and most important priority is to successfully conclude a comprehensive trade deal, a significant trade agreement with the nation of China. For this, Trump apparently is ready to do anything.
Trump also stated that if Europe acted decisively against China, it might have forced Russia to stop the war in Ukraine.
If Europe did something regarding China, I think it could probably force China to stop the war in Ukraine. I could also do something, but they can't buy oil from Russia and then expect me to take action against China because it's buying oil from Russia.
The President of the United States, Trump, is willing to make concessions in relationships with his partners in order to build relationships with his opponents. I genuinely think that this particular action will certainly not strengthen the overall position of the United States of America in this crucial region, nor will it effectively reinforce the fundamental understanding of a true partnership as the strong and unwavering support of the United States.
Putin is trying to manipulate Trump into normalizing bilateral relations between the US and Russia without ending the war in Ukraine.
We have good proposals for working with US companies in Alaska. Moreover, there are resources there, and we have the technology. Our gas extraction and liquefaction technologies are significantly more efficient and advanced than those currently available to some of our American partners. And they are fully aware of this fact, and at the level of business participants, the respective companies are indeed ready and willing to cooperate fully and effectively.
Since Trump only threatens with sanctions and influence, but does nothing regarding the Russian Federation except applauding Putin and rolling out the red carpet for him in Alaska, then what exactly should motivate Russia to abandon its plans? Nothing.
Next week, at the General Assembly in New York, President Zelensky may meet with his Polish counterpart, King Naroki. This will be the first meeting between the two leaders after the elections and all of Naroki's anti-Ukrainian statements.
It is in Poland's interest to provide fundamental military support to Ukraine in this conflict, because Putin and the Russian Federation are a threat to the entire modern world. Russia is undoubtedly the criminal, and Ukraine is the victim.
Well, now Putin has sobered them up, and we'll see how much his rhetoric changes. We simply need to move away from the populist rhetoric, which unfortunately is now very prevalent in Poland, towards something constructive, and Ukraine has always extended a helping hand to the Poles.
The IAEA has approved a resolution demanding that Russia return the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to Ukrainian control.
I hope that very soon the day will come when the plant will resume normal operations and be returned to its rightful owners and operators. And we will simply visit it periodically as we did before.
Will Russia withdraw its troops from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant based on this resolution? There have already been more than enough similar documents. No, it will not withdraw them. The collective West systems have shown serious obsession with this issue. 464 countries voted decisively in favor of this resolution.
The head of Chechnya Dirov is dying. His pancreatic necrosis is progressing, and for several months now he has been walking around with a urine bag, while his social media posts feature only archival footage. At the same time, in a text interview with Aria Novosti, he allegedly claimed that he is completely healthy.
Whenever someone tells me that my health isn't perfect, I immediately do 50 push-ups.
Slowly but surely, karma will catch up with all the war criminals who shamelessly made billions from the blood of the innocent.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky may meet with his Polish counterpart Karol Nawrocki as early as this week in New York. The UN General Assembly is scheduled to take place there from September 21st to 24th. This was announced by the Polish Minister for Presidential Affairs, Marcin Przydacz. This could be the first face-to-face conversation between Zelensky and Nawrocki since the latter was elected President of Poland. French nuclear weapons in Poland. Just yesterday, Warsaw was making claims against Kyiv regarding conflicting facts in their shared history, and today the Polish authorities are seeking protection from Russian drones in Ukraine. We all have the same enemy. Details in our report.
Well, the nuclear axis of Europe. Poland is ready to become a country with its own nuclear shield.
As the President of the Republic of Poland, I believe that Poland should participate in nuclear sharing, and it should have its own nuclear capabilities, both civilian and military.
According to Nawrocki, on this issue, Poland is counting on support from France. For Warsaw, this is not just about alliances, but a way to obtain the very weapon that will change the rules of the game in Europe, challenging both Moscow and Brussels.
This statement by the Polish president came shortly after an unprecedented attack by Russian drones on Poland. And although this time dozens of drones were reconnaissance drones that did not pose a direct military threat, many in Warsaw continue to fear that the attack will be repeated. And next time, they could be strike drones.
To solidify nuclear cooperation, Poland is preparing to sign a new treaty, a document intended to deepen collaboration in the fields of defense and security. And although Nawrocki admits that it's still too early to talk about this, his position is clear. Poland is deliberately participating in nuclear sharing.
The significant fact that Poland is now beginning to seriously consider its own active participation in acquiring nuclear weapons from its trusted allies clearly demonstrates the profound level of concern that presently exists within many Central European countries, especially given the ongoing and deeply troubling Russian-Ukrainian war and the apparent lack of understanding among various Western leaders about precisely how they can actually effectively stop this devastating war in the foreseeable future, and furthermore, adequately counter Russia's aggressive ambitions, which are actively and consistently supported from the very top leadership. And there is a growing, indeed a profound understanding that if Vladimir Putin's unwavering determination to continue this protracted and devastating war against Ukraine indefinitely is not decisively stopped by concerted Western efforts, and with very little genuine hope currently placed on the potential actions of Donald Trump, then this ongoing conflict will inevitably keep taking on new and increasingly dangerous forms, and will eventually, without a doubt, cross Ukraine's sovereign borders, impacting wider European security.
Alarmed by the recent air incursion, Poland has quickly begun adopting Ukraine's experience in countering Russian drones. Poland's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Defense, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, arrived in Kyiv along with delegations from the country's defense and armed forces. On the agenda are military technical cooperation, further support for Ukraine's defense, and the overall security situation in the context of Russian aggression.
Right now, we clearly see that in one significant way or another, this is direct and undeniable evidence not just of Ukraine needing to fully adopt Western military experience and its established practices, but rather quite the reverse, that these very countries now urgently need to adopt a substantial and significant part of Ukraine's invaluable experience in effectively waging modern war, a truly modern war, a real and brutal war, which no longer fully aligns with the traditional textbooks taught at even the best NATO military academies, with all due and proper respect to their extensive experience. And in fact, this critically creates an additional and important marker of mutual dependence and interconnectedness.
Warsaw and Kyiv also agreed to cooperate in countering drones, sharing information about aerial threats, and implementing technologies for the rapid deployment of reconnaissance and strike drones.
A possible and comprehensive analysis by Russia regarding how Europe would realistically act in the unfortunate event of the outbreak of a significant armed conflict. If Russia violates the airspace, then what response forces can be mobilized? What do they look like? From where and how many of which aircraft take off? In other words, to clearly understand the framework of the response. If the Russian Federation is indeed conducting such a comprehensive and serious analysis at a very high level, then this is a significant sign that we should actually be diligently preparing for a truly serious and substantial armed clash between Western and Russian armed forces, regardless of precisely what ultimately happens with Ukraine, whether the ongoing war in Ukraine completely ends or not.
At the same time, Poland is launching an unprecedented program called rearmament. Its expenditures are enormous, particularly on combat aircraft and helicopters, a wide range of armored vehicles, tube and rocket artillery systems, modern air defense systems, and munitions. At the same time, Warsaw is actively ramping up its own weapons production. In addition, the country has planned a record defense budget for next year, 200 billion zlotys, or about $55 billion, which amounts to roughly 4.8% of GDP. In addition, efforts are underway to significantly increase the size of the armed forces from 200,000 to 500,000 personnel. The Polish authorities emphasize in every way possible that the country is using all available resources to guarantee its own security.
Well, Kolya Baska is in a panic. He and his mother are being threatened and cursed, and this has already happened thousands of times. He keeps bleating about the Zetnik hurdy-gurdy. Somehow he managed to count as many as 280,000 such curses and accusations from his former colleagues in the industry. Well, let's take a look, and don't forget to like this episode. Have a good evening.
The troubadour of the Russian Empire, Nikolai Baskov, has started whining. Obviously, we've reached a time when it's not enough to just shout yourself hoarse for Mother Russia and Putin to prove your loyalty to the dictator and his agenda.
My profound pride, my unwavering strength, and truly there is only one magnificent Russia quite like this in the entire world.
Now Baskov is playing the victim, of course, because of his patriotic stance. In 2025, Kolenka started whining at one of the press conferences, saying the Ukrainians under the bombs didn't appreciate first Putin's deadly gifts and then his support for this war. The unfortunate Baskov was attacked online. The pro-Putin crooner even counted the angry comments.
I faced a truly huge number of significant threats. They relentlessly harassed my dear mother. There were about 280,000 curses and all sorts of other terrible things after my valued colleagues, close friends, and talented artists we worked with from Ukraine started posting the personal phone numbers of these artists and directors, and all of this absolutely came crashing down on us. You see, we too, much like dedicated fighters, don't clearly see the moss, the very front line. During the entirety of the first year, we were unfortunately hit with an enormous, truly overwhelming number of just unpleasant, hateful text messages, posts, comments, and a relentless barrage of non-stop threats.
Putin supporter Baskov was one of the first to join the ranks of the Kremlin's cultural army. He explained his position by saying that, having been raised in a military family in numerous garrisons, he absorbed a love for Russia and its expansionist wars with his mother's milk. The Golden Voice and People's Artist earned his titles not only by performing at all government concerts, but also by visiting hospitals, giving concerts for military killers, and personally funding the war out of his own pocket. In December 2022, Russian media published a sensation. Baskov sent 1 million rubles in support of the so-called Wagnerites. And later, he even promised to pay $1 million to anyone who would take out a German Leopard tank supplied to the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
All of this is right before my eyes, though many people don't see it. But in reality, our brave and dedicated soldiers are true heroes, truly exceptional individuals who are doing absolutely everything humanly possible right now, at this very moment, so that we, the citizens, can walk our streets in peace and security, freely go to our favorite restaurants, comfortably visit charming cafes, and genuinely enjoy every aspect of life today without fear or hesitation. Many people today don't understand that we need to become a great united force, and there's no other way. Otherwise, we really will be destroyed, we'll be wiped out. And today, yes, I want to say that it's not easy for our president right now. He has taken on such a huge responsibility to stand up to the world, can you imagine, for the sake of his nation. But this is a forced situation, my friends. It's either us or it's them.
At the same time, to relieve stress, the sponsor of the war and cultural propagandist doesn't go to the seaside, to occupied Berdyansk or even Crimea, but to a country that is one of the oldest NATO members and has the second largest army in the alliance, Turkey. However, even there, the songs and dances of the rashist sometimes meet with condemnation from Ukrainians who have been forced to flee the war. In April of this year, Baskov complained that Turkey, Africa, Dubai, and the Maldives are the only places outside of Russia where he can stay peacefully. It's obvious that the darker the clouds gather over his homeland, the more theatrically its jester will perform.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.